The story. Former President Thabo Mbeki says it's not true that government was warned about an impending electricity crisis by Eskom and that advice was ignored. Mbeki was speaking to students at UNISA today. He blamed Eskom managers and people who wanted to benefit from black economic empowerment deals for the ongoing power crisis. Our reporter Moloko Moloto has been listening to his speech. He joins us now. Moloko, hi. This is fascinating because what we know is that Thabo Mbeki has publicly apologized for not heeding the advice of Eskom managers around the impending power crisis. Is he walking that back?
Good evening, Sally Badet. Well, the former president of the Republic, Thabo Mbeki, of course, in his capacity as the vice-chancellor of the University of the Land, UNISA, had an opportunity of interacting with the students and other stakeholders of the University of South Africa today in Pretoria, and various questions were put to him from crime that we are seeing happening in the country, going on to say that it is very difficult when people in the country are saying that some of the police officers are kind of in the pockets of criminals. It's very difficult to defeat crime in the country, but saying that all of us must get down to it and come up with solutions. On the issue of electricity, the former president, interestingly, you would recall that on the 12th of December 2007, when he was addressing an ANC fundraising gala dinner in Bloemfontein, the Free State, he apologized publicly for the first time for the load shedding that had just started at that time, where he was saying that Eskom was correct. They warned us, we did not listen. Now, today he has come out to say that it's a story that's been cooked, that we have been advised and we turned down. And he's saying that some of the power stations, for instance, Kusile, has not been concluded despite the fact that money was spent. And he's correct. We know that the Eskom board, former CEO, when he was making a presentation before Parliament, indicating that Eskom needed more money. This is despite the fact that Medupi and Kusile, whose construction started in 2008 and 2009 respectively, to do away with the power crisis. The deadline was in 2014. Government did not meet that, and the 79 billion rand and the 80 billion rand respectively that had been budgeted have doubled in terms of the cost. Obviously, Eskom still requires more money to complete that. We still have load shedding. So the former president today coming out to say essentially it was never his fault, really. It is the fault of those who decided not to replenish coal at Eskom, and as a result we found ourselves in this particular mess. Maybe let's listen to him in his own words, Sally.
The first time we had a national shutdown, load shedding, national, was in January 2008. Professor Nzovu, you remember that? It was January 2008, load shedding, national. The mines closed down for a whole week. Serious crisis. And the argument was that the reason for that was because Eskom had told the government in 1998 that there must be investment in new infrastructure. And the government didn't listen. New infrastructure for generation. Government didn't listen. Hence the blackout in January 2008. That story was false. That story was cooked up. The reason there was a shutdown in January 2008 is because the people who were in charge of the power stations didn't do what they were supposed to do, which was to replenish coal, so that you got coal nearby to put into the power station. They didn't. The power stations ran out of coal. Not because there was no coal in the country. But the people in Eskom decided, let's shut it down. Brian gets appointed to head Eskom in 2014, April or thereabouts. And by August 2018, they had finished with the load shedding.
Moloko, just for some clarity, because I'm quite confused about exactly what he is saying. This man is on record apologising on behalf of government for not listening to Eskom. Is he saying he never apologised? Is he saying we didn't need to apologise? Just please clear this up.
Sally, I had wanted to speak to him, the former president. I tried to speak to his team, even his the chief executive officer of his foundation, hoping that at least he would clarify whether Eskom never went to them to warn them about this, or whether they never ignored it, that particular warning, or whether he is saying that he never apologized. So up to so far, really, I am still not too sure exactly what it is that he says was false and was cooked up. But of course, what we know is that clearly he doesn't see anything wrong on his part there. Of course, at the time he was not president of the Republic. He only became president of the Republic in 1999, but he was deputy president of the Republic to Nelson Mandela, and he was leader of government business. So it would not really be impossible for him to completely distance himself from what was happening.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to a bit more clarity. He certainly does seem to be throwing the blame around a bit more than he has in the past. And then I'm just wondering if this issue came up because, apparently he spoke quite glowingly about his term as president, and a lot of people do have good things to say. But one thing we simply cannot forget as South Africa is that he was an AIDS denialist, that he denied for a very long time and questioned for a very long time the link between HIV and AIDS. And while he had that questioning process, there was a delay in the rollout of medication and many people died. I'm wondering if any of the students raised those more contentious issues today.
Nothing on the controversial issue of HIV and the antiretroviral drugs. And of course, a lot of people would remember him questioning essentially whether HIV causes AIDS and all those scientific issues, but also the issue of nutrition that he was also saying, the issue of poverty. But we know that ultimately government had ended up rolling out the antiretroviral drugs for treatment for people who are living with HIV. And that was after many battles, including litigation in court. But that matter really was not raised here today with those who were in attendance. What really came up in the main was the collapse of governance in the country, where he quoted the person he says was the CEO of the South African Institute of International Relations, that he says has given phases that he said from 1994 to 2008 it would be phase 1 or H1, and things where really there was growth economically, and I suppose he is correct there. We saw the economy increasing, and he is saying that at that time things were improving, but from 2008 up until today things have really been going down, and he is saying we should be asking ourselves questions as to exactly why. In his own words, he says that there was an effort that was made from then, 2008 to date, to ensure that the democratic system is destroyed. He gave an example of how the South African receiver of revenue services, SARS, was captured and destroyed, saying that Tom Moyane, who was the commissioner of SARS, was trained a year before he was even appointed as the National Commissioner of SARS, but by Bain Company, that of course we know it emerged that it had captured SARS during the Nugent Commission. And he's saying we must see that, because if you capture and collapse SARS, you are essentially collapsing the state, because it generates more money for the state. And he is saying there are people who would even be prepared to kill in order to ensure that they collapse this democratic system, that he says even the ANC itself doesn't quite grasp that particular reality. And he says it's about time South Africans discuss that. Let's listen to him.
You look at all of the state institutions. Look at Transnet. Look at what's happened to the police service. Look at the prosecution. All of these things going wrong systematically. Is it an accident? It's not. There's a whole process that takes place in this country which still we don't understand, of a systematic process to ensure that the democratic republic doesn't succeed. Even the question that's raised about crime.